Once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen.
This sector is built, but technology keeps the industry's wheels turning. Like many other countries, including the US, we've been thinking hard about the benefits, challenges, and opportunities that are offered by new financial technologies. Earlier this month, on the 4th of April at UK's FinTech Week, I set out our firm ambition to make Britain a global hub for crypto asset technology and investment, a place where firms can innovate, scale up, and start up. And the message that we're sending to crypto firms is that the UK is open for business, open for crypto business. And we're backing up these words with clear and urgent actions. In fact, we've just announced a package of reforms which will lead to an evolution to the way that we regulate crypto assets and in aspects of the way that they're treated for tax.
This is John Glenn. He currently serves as the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, which is the sixth most senior ministerial post in the UK Treasury. The Economic Secretary is responsible for devising of regulations, orders, and legislation in various manners.
These include specifically legislating to bring stablecoins into payments regulation, primarily by amending the UK's existing electronic money and payments legislation to help create the right conditions for stablecoin issuers and service providers to flourish. We've also committed to consult on a future regulatory regime for a broader set of crypto activities, such as the trading of tokens later this year. And I just mentioned that this is something that we do in full knowledge and awareness of what's happening in other jurisdictions. In my conversations in Washington, both in September and 2 weeks ago, I'm very aware of the range of activities that are going on in this space. The President's executive order, the 13 reports he's commissioned, talking to the different regulators, and there are several in the US, and trying to work out how do we respond to this challenge. There isn't a playbook on the shelf, but we are determined to get it right here in the UK.
You may remember that the Bank of England is a paying Ripple customer, or Ripple and Quant are part of the Digital Pound Foundation. Well, it sounds like the Secretary of Treasury is letting you know that they want to move out with favorable crypto regulations and are working closely with the United States of America.
We'll be setting up a ministerial-chaired crypto asset engagement group, bringing together key figures in government, financial regulators, and industry globally to help guide those next steps. And on tax, meanwhile, we'll look at specific issues to remove disincentives to UK fund managers, including crypto assets, in their portfolios. Now, if I've learned anything in the last 4 years that I've served in this role, it's that financial technology's potential is boundless and transforming to this sector.
Transformational and boundless technology. They will remove the disincentives and clarify laws for institutional investors to invest and banks to utilize crypto assets. Remember, he has a firm ambition to make England a global crypto hub. The beauty behind crypto is the retail investor has accumulated before the institutions are legally allowed to invest. He's telling you they will clarify the laws for the institutions. When sovereign wealth funds get in, we won't need to look at the news. The markets will move. iTrustCapital allows their clients to invest in crypto through an individual retirement account or an IRA. IRAs are tax-sheltered accounts, which means all of your crypto trading is tax-free and can even grow tax-free over time. It's free to open an account and there are no hidden fees. You don't have to pay a monthly subscription or a membership fee either. The platform also offers a growing list of 25 different cryptocurrencies to invest in, with more being added all the time, so it's easy to diversify your portfolio. An important thing to consider in the crypto space is security. iTrust happens to be best in class for security as they have partnered with Coinbase Custody to keep all of your crypto assets in institutional storage. If you use my link iTrustCapital/Darren, you can get up to $100 funding reward just by using my link. So be sure to research IRAs and iTrustCapital.
17th century London coffee houses that evolved into the insurance sector, to the 20th century cash machines that have changed the way people access their money for good. The history of the financial services in the UK is dotted with inflection points, moments that transformed the industry of the time and spurred its development into the sector we know today. And I believe that this is one such moment. And as this report says, it does pay to be bold in it. And that is precisely what we're doing with our plan for financial services. The major regulatory reforms I've just outlined, our huge ambitions for technology and new and stronger global relationships that will be multidimensional across the globe. We're forging those across the globe and with the US, and they will bring transformative changes. They will remodel the way that we regulate and govern financial services in this country. And they will build our reputation as one of the safest, most competitive, and most open financial services industries in the world. I greatly look forward to the end of this chapter of this journey and seeing the results of that work and the benefits that they can bring.
Digital assets are at an inflection point, and they will transform the world. They plan to be bold and bring this transformative change with the entire world and the United States. Understand this technology is able to produce the production of the entire globe. In this ACI PDF, ACI is a Ripple partner, it shows domestic real-time payments are able to double GDP by 2026. What happens when frictions are removed from the cross-border market? Global GDP will double. GDP is wealth. Currency is just the measurement of that wealth. Doubling GDP means the entire world becomes more wealthier.
And Jennifer, if I ask you, because in fact, if you look at what we've been through with the pandemic, I mean, it's clear, isn't it, that there's, I guess the mother of all inventions is a crisis in a way. It's moved us to be as we heard earlier, 2025 and 2021. And some would argue it was even further.
You're in my head, Ali. Exactly. That's what I was thinking as I was listening to Conan, right? Which is we see the most progress born out of tragedy or large global events, right? So we saw it with the pandemic and the rise of fintech globally. Again, we've seen it with the invasion in Ukraine and kind of the acceleration, I think, of the normalizing of how we're talking about digital currency. So I agree. I think it will only put more pressure and open more doors for new innovations that perhaps we don't even know yet, right? I think we don't even know the extent to the technologies that we're talking about.
In this BlackRock PDF, it states currently 87 countries representing 90% of world GDP are exploring central bank digital currencies, which could drastically reduce marketplace frictions, democratize access to financial markets, and optimize monetary policies. Yet the market still appears to underappreciate how these benefits in state-sponsored and independent cryptocurrencies may drive faster proliferation, which most of the market attention has been focused on price and volatility of cryptocurrencies themselves. We believe the broader opportunity leveraging blockchain technology for payments, contracts, and consumption broadly has not yet been priced in.
And how could it look like? Is it the SDR? Is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? Because in the end, we're looking for a neutral reserve asset, right? That has rules that cannot be changed so easily and not politically.
The solution to the problem is very simple, and that is you peg a neutral reserve asset to energy at a fixed rate, right? So you say you do a one-time revaluation of gold against oil. To simplify, you could use Bitcoin, but gold is worth 100 barrels an ounce, 200 barrels an ounce, 1,000 barrels an ounce, whatever. And then you have to that decentralizes the energy policy to each country. Because under the dollar system, America's in charge of everybody's energy policy, right? Through the dollar. We print a bunch of money, the Fed raises rates, right? Like everyone's energy policy is a derivative of the US and the Fed.
As trust erodes, as frictions become red hot, how do they solve these problems? Trustless systems. When a crisis comes, the structural changes will be implemented. The dollar is at the epicenter of the financial system, and it comes with an exorbitant privilege. But it also comes with disadvantages. The U.S. has had its manufacturing hollowed out and outsourced to countries with cheap labor like China. The cost is high, trade deficits as well as responsibility for the whole global economy. Our inflation is rising and our hands are tied because when we fight inflation, we crush everybody else.
It's very simple to mandate. It's like I said, you just peg a unit of energy to a unit of gold or Bitcoin or something, and away you go. Now, politically, it is not very simple. It's incredibly difficult politically. So that's ultimately the fix. Now, interestingly, as we talked about earlier, is Washington has generally benefited from this arrangement. There's increasingly, particularly post-COVID, a new school of thought of this, which is we're not benefiting from this. The dollar system as structured has deindustrialized us so much that it's now a national security risk. And this is something the U.S. military has been saying for over a decade. You can't tell us that China is our big strategic competitor and potential threat and then expect us to source our war machine from China. It's stupid. And in Washington, like I said, the U.S. Department of Defense has been saying this for over a decade. Until COVID, though, nobody in Washington was listening. Once Washington said, "Ooh, we need masks," and the Chinese said, "Hold on, you'll get your masks after we get our masks," then it became obvious to even the most rabid, post-$71 system proponents that there was a problem with this system. And it really just comes down to military guys or supply chain guys at the end. Wars are about logistics. You have logistics, you win. You don't, you lose. And the military guys have been saying for a decade, this dollar system that has hollowed out our manufacturing has led us unable to fight a war without China, which is a problem because we might be fighting China. And so I think that's where we are in terms of a potential catalyst for this system to migrate from this post-$71 system to this system with a neutral reserve asset.
The United States had fought wars over the dollar hegemony. We're at an age where reserve currencies are not necessary due to being able to swap assets with zero frictions instantaneously. The reserve currency status of the dollar has come with costs, trade deficits that have ballooned, and to crippled U.S. manufacturing, where we rely heavily on outside sources.
Yeah, I think your phrase, "they defaulted on reserves," is the right language, which is we've gone from, Americans default on gold reserves to Americans default on gold reserves to the rest of the world, Americans default on the petrodollar pseudo-peg, dollar gold pseudo-peg, and now Americans and Europeans default on FX reserves. And when I say default is you referred to them as being a piggy bank, and that's, I think, the right way. These are simply the result of past economic surplus, past economic activity. These are the savings instrument. And so to the extent they were weaponized, it opened a Pandora's box for creditor regions that could be named bad actors in the future. And everybody, over the last 50 to 70 years, everybody's been a bad actor at one point in time in the Americans' eyes, and in really any nation's eyes. It's simply the nature of global geopolitics. So now we're into this area where what is going to be where imbalances are going to occur. They tend to occur around energy and commodity trade. What are the surpluses around and deficits around those imbalances going to be settled in? And knowing that that FX reserves are no longer safe from political sanction or seizure, I think it actually is a trip back to the future, is what we're seeing, which is if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it. There's really only a couple reserve assets, that I think are of use. I think I think gold, number one. I think Bitcoin at some point could serve that some of that role as well. And then I think, Zoltan Pozsar at Credit Suisse has been very vocal about this, that you'll see an increasing reserving of commodities and commodity assets. Now, what's interesting is this is effectively but what Russia and the Chinese have been doing really since 2008 and certainly since 2013. You alluded to Russia getting rid of their dollar reserves. They've been buying lots of gold since 2008, most of it stockpiled in Russia itself. But the Chinese have been very clearly favoring finite hard assets. You can Google China buys blank, and you'll find it's gold, it's copper mines, it's oil fields, it's farmland, it's the port of Piraeus in Greece, excuse me. And then lending dollars out along the Belt and Road. So they earn dollars, they earn a spread on their dollars, and a lot of times these loans are collateralized further by hard assets, and so or commodity production streams, right? So there's there was an article in 2013 that China had monopolized Ecuador's oil. They lent them dollars and they took payment in oil barrels, and that there was a model that has been happening all over. So it's interesting that we're now reaching this point where you have someone as esteemed as Zoltan Pozsar at Credit Suisse calling this Bretton Woods 3, this new system where FX reserves are no longer of value because they can be sanctioned or seized at any time. And so what is of value is gold, Bitcoin, commodities. That's exactly where Russia and China have been for the last 10 years.
The financial system requires trust. When you deposit money in your bank, it's no longer your money, it's the bank's money, and they decide whether you can have it. With the U.S. sanctioning FX reserves, this realization is happening on a global scale. The U.S. sanctioned the Central Bank of Russia and froze billions in assets. At one point, every country has been a bad actor in the U.S.'s eyes and has opened a Pandora's box of distrust. Countries cannot confidently hold their savings in this system. There is a fear that their savings will be taken from them if they do not play ball. With tokenization with smart contracts, these financial systems can be built in a way to restore trust, where assets are censorship resistant.
That the government cannot allow the free markets to set the borrowing rate for the government. And the central bank then effectively or explicitly caps those interest rates in order to allow the government to continue to afford to borrow. And we're there. Like, that's the thing that people, I find, by and large, still do not understand. U.S. debt to GDP at 125% and rising, and U.S. deficits at 10% of GDP at this point in the economic cycle, with unemployment as low as it is, and us still having tax receipts that are barely covering just our treasury spending and our entitlement pay-goes. These are the tinder and kindling wood for an inflationary fire, because the U.S. government is not going to allow the bond market to defund it. Interest rates at some point are going to reach a point where the United States cannot afford treasury spending, entitlements, and defense. Those three items alone are 120% of tax receipts, with the U.S. tax receipts at all-time highs and up enormously last year on the back of 12% nominal GDP, inflated by 8% inflation. That was probably closer to 10% inflation. And it's that transition where it becomes obvious to everybody that QE isn't about stimulus and all this other crap they tell you. It's about making sure the U.S. government's borrowing rate is economically palatable, that you really get that aha psychological moment into some sort of high inflation situation. And I think every tick higher in the 10-year Treasury yield brings us closer to that moment. And I think that's why gold is rising with nominal rates doing what they're doing, why gold is rising with real rates doing what they're doing. Everybody's looking at gold and going, oh, I want to short gold. No, you shouldn't be. What gold's telling you is a sovereign debt crisis is coming in the United States of America, in Europe, where the central banks are going to have to say, that's it, free markets, you're done for a while. Here's the price of the Treasury. And when that happens, inflation is going to go.
The modern monetary theorists argue if GDP is high, the debt is meaningless. I personally do not subscribe to this theory. However, there is validity to this argument. Debt to GDP is what matters. If technological advances can advance production, the world can take on a lot more debt. Right now, entitlements, interest, Social Security, Medicare costs is more than the tax revenue the U.S. brings in. Inflation is fought by raising interest rates. But there is so much debt that raising interest rates to 10% means the government can't pay. 10% of 30 trillion. This means the Fed will need to peg interest rates. When that happens, the world will lose confidence and inflation will spike drastically. With technological innovation, the world can produce more goods and services. This will help the fundamental problems of today. The revelation of thought takes men out of servitude into freedom. Thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please tell me what you think in the comments below. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this and want to support my channel, please consider joining my Patreon. On Patreon, I add these videos early and turn off monetization. Every week we have a group discussion and I post information that I find to create these videos.